Hello and welcome to another edition of the Avid Screencast. My name is Christian Förster, and today and next week we're going to deep dive into one of the most popular and powerful effects in Avid, the Timewarp. First of all, let's just start by applying the Timewarp to one of our clips here. Go to Tools, Effect Palette, go to the Timewarp category. So let's just apply the Timewarp. So now let's go into Effect Editor. It opens the Motion Effect Editor. First of all, there are two ways to view what kind of thing you're doing. One is the speed graph and one is the position graph. They basically show the same thing but in different ways. One of them is the speed of the footage that you're playing. One is what position it is at a specific point in time. And we're gonna figure out what that means later. Right next, you can say which graph you want to edit, speed or position. You can only edit one at a time and only one setting applies. So you can say, I want to go with the position because for the effect I want to do, position makes a lot of sense. Or you can go with speed. Then there's the render types. And there are a lot of options here. So let's quickly go through them, and in our example, let's say we have a 50% slow motion, right? So duplicated field basically, if you're in interlaced, throws away one field and repeats the remaining field 4 times. So we have the 50% slow motion, right? So it goes field 1, 1, 1, 1. It looks crappy, you shouldn't use it. Forget that option. Then there's both fields. This one would actually do field 1, field 2, field 1, field 2. Great resolution, but motion jittering. If there's a lot of motion, you will have jitter in the motion. Then there's interpolated field, which takes the first field as it is. For the second field of the resulting clip, it will take the first field and blend the lines together. For the third field, it will blend the lines together of the second field. And the fourth field will be the second field of the source clip. VDR style does a very similar thing. It doesn't do blending of the lines, but just repeating of them. So they both look pretty nice and they are okay, and you can just try out which one looks better. Then there's blended interpolated and blended VDR, which also does some field and frame blending. And I actually like blended interpolated because it gives slightly mushy, but overall very, very nice motion, and it is still real time. And then there's the king of the render types, which is fluid motion. That takes a long time to render, but definitely worth the wait. This one will actually calculate the motion between the two frames and create a new frame in between that. So that is actually a real calculation. That calculation sometimes can go wrong and you have weird motion artifacts, but you can kind of deal with that, and we'll do that in a later episode. And there's this setting down here where you can make interlaced sources progressive or progressive sources interlaced, however you would want to do that. And there's possibilities to strobe the image. So let's do that, 5 frames. And there you can see what it looks like. So there you have it strobing. Okay, that's the basics of the left tab here. And now let's start actually manipulating the image, right? So let's start with the motion graph editor. What you can see here is a straight line. It is at 100%. That is because at the moment we don't have any speed increases or decreases anywhere. So now let's say we want him to move very, very quickly up to maybe this point here where he's looking into the camera. And then he should just resume his motion normally. So what we do is start with a higher percentage than those 100%, right? So let's go with something like 600%. And now you can actually go through here and say, there we see his face. So at this point, he should be at 100%. So let's add another keyframe and say 100%. Ouch! Now this didn't work the way it was supposed to. Yeah, I guess that's a good time to talk about the right-click menu. So, right-click, and here you have a lot of options. Add and delete keyframes. Okay, they should be pretty self-explanatory. This one as well. But now what we want to change is how the speed changes actually happen. Now, the default way they do is by a spline. What it does, you can see there's a smooth S-curve from one keyframe to the next. Similar one is Bezier, but you have Bezier handles to actually change the way the curve looks. Makes it not real time. Another option we have is linear. It does what you thought would happen. It draws a straight line between those, so the speed change is absolutely constant. And there's another option, one we want to use now, and that is shelve. What it does is the speed will remain constant the way you set it at the keyframe up to the next keyframe, where it will momentarily change to the speed that you set in that new keyframe. So the speed stays at 600% and boom, there it is at 100%. So let's look at that. Whoa, he's moving really, really quickly. Well, I think he's moving a little too quickly at the beginning. So let's change the speed of the first keyframe to like 300%. What happens now is the speed stays at 300% to the next keyframe where it goes to 100%. But of course, as we only have half the speed, we're not actually far enough into the movement. He's not actually to be seen. So we have to move this keyframe to the right. Now there's a couple of ways to do this. First of all, you can option drag the keyframe, but that is not what we're going to do. What we're going to do is go like here, right click, and say align keyframe. What this does is pretty obvious. It just moves the keyframe to where your position marker is. That is absolutely the right point. So let's look at that. Whoa, better. Okay. And while we're at it, we can also check out the other option that is right there, and that is slip keyframes. There's a difference between the two, and you'll see it right next. Slipping actually takes all the other keyframes, slips them exactly the same amount in the direction that you aligned your keyframe. Okay, now we have achieved our result, and it worked rather well, but we had to kind of guess where the point is that we want to change the speed, right? I had to guess, and it worked well because I'm good at guessing. But it's not a very elegant way to do it. This is where we meet the anchor point. We're back at the beginning, but what we're gonna do now is go to the point, say here, where we know later on we'll want the speed change to happen. No matter what speed we had before, we will always want to make the speed change at this exact point. So add a keyframe there and click on the anchor button. As you can see, the little anchor has just moved to this keyframe. Now what we can do is change the position of the first keyframe. And there's actually nothing happening right here because there's no more footage in the source clip. But as soon as the source footage starts, we have movement, and it changes the speed to 100% at exactly the right time.